And then that brings us to the G1 Climax 2021 final match as the A Block representative Kota Ibushi was defeated by the B Block finalist Kazuchika Okada by referee decision, 25 minutes, 37 seconds.
Man, heartbreaking. Just absolutely heartbreaking with this match. And I feel bad for poor Kota Ibushi, man. Like 2021 has been a rough year for him from the get-go. I mean, initially he wins the double titles, but then, you know, in kayfabe, he's lobbying for the titles to be merged, the titles get unified, and, you know, fans are blaming Ibushi for the unification of the titles. He has that title offense against Desperado that nobody cared about because it was supposed to be Hiromu. Then he gets aspiration pneumonia and has to miss several months and misses the match with Shingo. Now he has his G1 and it's not that great of a G1. And then he finally gets to his fourth finals. Fans are pissed that it's his fourth finals, and then he just completely eats it here on a Phoenix Splash and dislocates his shoulder.
Yeah, and there was a similar injury that occurred during one of the, I believe it was Best of Super Junior tournaments, but I can't recall exactly. But Ibushi had years ago done, I believe it was a Phoenix Splash as well, and injured one, if not maybe the same arm. So it's not that this has never happened, but you know, I was thinking about this. You know, Ibushi still high flies, still does, you know, some crazy things, but you know, ever since going to heavyweight, ever since you know, putting on the muscle mass and kind of changing style up a bit, you know, not unlike Will Ospreay, we haven't seen as many of these high risk maneuvers, especially like the Phoenix Splash is something that he only pulls out in the biggest of matches, and it didn't pay off in this one, unfortunately, which was also unfortunate, not just because of his own health and well-being, but because the match itself was starting to get, the match itself was very good and was starting to get to that next level where there was really starting to pick things up. And then it just ended very anticlimactically. Was watching this with my girlfriend. She actually commented and said it reminded her of the Conor McGregor finish when his leg broke.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, it does kind of leave you with a bad feeling in your stomach when you're watching it like that. It's kind of the same thing too. Or like when Anderson Silva broke his leg, or like when Chris Weidman broke his leg, you know. Unfortunate injuries that you don't ever really want to see happen that, you know, kind of decide the finish of the match.
Right, and you can just tell, like, as soon as he landed from that Phoenix Splash, like, he just ate it, and it was just not a great landing whatsoever. And yeah, so immediately started clutching his wrist, clutching his shoulder, and doctors had to come in and stop the match. Like you mentioned, like, up to that point, like, it was a very good approaching, you know, great matchup, and so many great counters and spots. And Ibushi hit a beautiful Asai moonsault earlier, but there was just so many just great counters, and you know, it was building to be like a, you know, a very great G1 final matchup. And
yeah, it's one of those things. You kind of wonder why this sort of injury doesn't happen more often. And I don't mean specifically this exact thing, but you know, not to say that wrestlers don't get injured. We hear about injuries all the time, but you know, very often they're not, you know, as serious as maybe they could have been. Or you see a lot of times where guys fall in ways or take maneuvers in ways where you imagine that they should be hurt and they're not. So it is almost a wonder why this sort of thing doesn't happen more often, given how much wrestling is out there, you know, as far as scale goes. So I've always kind of wondered if something like this might happen. And we've seen injuries in the G1. We've seen people have to take time off, forfeit matches. Obviously, Naito's even out in this exact same G1. But this was just heartbreaking. And, you know, I didn't see this happen, but you heard the commentary team stating that he was like telling the attendants to get off of him and to help him basically pop his shoulder back into place and let him finish the match. And Red Shoes called the whole thing off. So, you know, it was a little bit deflating just the way that it ended there. But, you know, we'll have an update on Kota Ibushi here later in the show. But the good news is it's not an arm break. So
Right, and it just, yeah, like you mentioned, it just totally like killed the mood. Like Okada's supposed to be celebrating. You got confetti, you got the big G1 trophy and the flag, and you're supposed to be having this big celebration. But like, you're worried about Ibushi, and the match was ruined, and it just really kind of killed the whole mood of the closing of the show.
Yeah, and I think Okada was going to win the match anyways. Even just the booking of the match, they were clearly telling a story not dissimilar to the previous night's match where Okada was looking to land the Rainmaker and Ibushi was avoiding it at all costs and actually countering it very many times. So it just seemed like a matter of time before he ate that Rainmaker and went to sleep. Um, Viking Pain asked, "Is this year really just an anomaly with freakish injuries to New Japan stars, or did Gato break a mirror, walked under a ladder, and crossed a black cat all on Friday the 13th for the company to get this cursed?" And there was something I was sort of thinking about all of this was actually I forgot my thought. I'll throw it to you. You go ahead and answer that.
I'm just gonna say that the curse happened when he put the belt on Evil. Like,
Yeah, things. Yeah, never mind COVID. It's all Evil's fault.
exactly. You put the belt on Evil, and things just ain't ever been right since.
I know what I was gonna say. Um, Hear me out. I don't want anyone to think that I am putting the sole blame on someone like Gato, but there is a part of me that has to wonder: was Ibushi ready to even be in this match in the first place, coming off of aspiration pneumonia?
Mm.
Now, granted, I do understand that, just based off of, what logic would tell you, he wrestled a big main event just before the G1 and looked pretty good all throughout the G1. I'm sure, hopefully, someone was checking in with him to see how he was doing and things like that. But there's a part of me that, and I'm not saying he couldn't, that it was malpractice to have him in the finals. It's not like he wasn't cleared. It's not like he couldn't go. But there is a part of me that's wondering, it's like, okay, this guy has had so many setbacks this year with, injuries and sicknesses. And then, you put him through this grueling G1. I understand they kept his match time relatively short, but is that maybe the wisest decision as opposed to other? Now, we talked about for business reasons why this was a big money match last week, and that is still valid. But there's a part of me that wonders, like, why not go with maybe, say, Zack Sabre or Kenta, just because they haven't had to deal with the health issues that Ibushi's had to deal with lately. Maybe that wasn't the prudent decision.
Right.
I'm not saying it's his fault or that this was bound to happen or the writing was on the wall, but maybe that wasn't the best decision. Just think about it for a second. I mean, I don't know. That's like a thought that popped in my head. I don't know.
Right, and also, like you mentioned, he was definitely cleared. But yeah, was he even like mentally ready for this? Like, we don't even know. Like, not even just physically. Was he even in the right mindset for a tournament like this, a spot like this, coming off of all that stuff? I guess we'll truly never know. But I mean, what's done is done, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And we'll have an update on him here in a second.